Welcome to the show, Grant Cohn, Jack Hammer. Jack, I always point the wrong direction.
Same thing.
Early in the morning today, the Niners signed a pass rusher yesterday. I thought this was a terrific move. Komoko Toure, he had almost as many sacks as Eric Armstead last season, about a quarter of the snaps. So not bad. And he's an edge rusher. At least that's what I think. Jack, tell us how this guy figures into the Niners' plans on defense.
This is an interesting one because you have the 49ers now have 11 strong defensive linemen, and so
Yeah.
where's it? Somebody's going to have to go. Who's going to be the guy that he replaces? And just based off of his position that he played in Indianapolis and his body type, it would seem that this might be a move to replace Samson Ebukam and his salary cap hit.
Wow. Right. Samson Ebukam is quite expensive this year, right? $8 million?
Yeah, it's $8 million. I think they can save about $5 million by releasing him or something along those lines. It's a pretty good savings by moving on from him. I think that might be the direction this move was targeted towards.
Right, because they only have 1 million in salary cap space right now, and they're going to need to create like 5 to 10 million to sign their draft picks.
Yeah, they're going to have to do that. So that's that's the first thing that popped into my head when I heard talks about Toure, a couple of weeks ago. So then when they went through with the signing, somebody's going to be out of that room, and that's the one that makes the most sense with this signing for me.
That's really interesting. I'm looking at Ebukam on Over the Cap, and if they were to cut him today, they would save $6.5 million in salary cap space. $6.5 million. That's probably enough to sign their draft picks.
It's almost, right in that ballpark.
Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Samson Ebukam, your days might be numbered. I mean, compare Toure and Ebukam. Is Toure a better pass rusher than him?
Well, from everything I've seen when it comes to Toure's pass rush numbers based on are really high based on the his percentage of win rate and those kind of things. So we don't know how he's going to, if he was an every down player, what he's going to look like, but at least in the snaps that he's doing, he's a good rotational piece. We know that.
Yeah, Ebukam's really more of a run defender. I mean, that's how they used him in LA as a base outside linebacker. On the Niners, they were turning him into a pass rusher, and he did actually have some good games rushing the quarterback toward the end of the season in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But maybe they feel whatever they're going to get from him isn't worth $8 million. They need some money. This guy's a better pass rusher. The one thing with him, though, he's missed some time with injuries, right?
I don't know a whole lot about him, but I think he has. The thing with Ebukam is, he came on quite a bit last year in the second half of the year when he was just focusing just on playing defensive end finally. So I don't know. That's why I really like Samson Ebukam. So if this is the move that they're taking, he needs to really be a heck of a player to replace that.
Well, Samson, you're on notice. They just brought in another. Because how many defensive ends do they have? Like D4 isn't coming back. We're not going to count him. But Nick Bosa, Ebukam, Toure, Willis. Hyder.
Kerry Hyder.
That was like 6.
Yeah, Kerry Hyder's the other name. They have a few. That's for sure. That rooms that position is pretty full.
So Toure, do you think he'll be a starting defensive end, do you think this means that Armstead's coming back to the edge? Because I hope Armstead goes back to the edge. That's my favorite.
If that's the move that they're making, then Armstead would have to be going back to the edge because they don't really have anybody else that would be your down and down out guy.
Toure's more of like a rotational pass rusher, probably more built for that role than Ebukam, who's never used that way in LA.
Yeah, Toure would be more of your third down pass rusher kind of situation, pass rush specialist kind of a guy.
Okay, yeah. And you would have Armstead and maybe a Menahu inside.
Yeah, Armstead, Amenahu, or Javon Kinlaw at times.
Oh, I remember Javon Kinlaw. They drafted his first-round pick.
They got rid of a future All-Pro for him. No big deal.
I don't remember that guy's name. Oh, well. At least the Niners got Kinlaw. Okay, moving on. So the Niners signed another defensive player. I really thought it was a good signing. I mean, a former second-round pick, Komoko Toure, a former second-round pick, just chilling. The Niners got another Indianapolis Colts cast-off, George Odom. They're getting a lot of defensive players and special teams guys. They did get 3 wide receivers. 2 of them I'm not even sure are going to make the team. But really, mostly every signing has been defense. It could be random. But why do you think that is? I have a theory.
I think the special teams piece is because they need to increase their. Actually, you can really say this for both, but they need to help with the field position because the offensive field starting field position has been so bad. I think that's where part of the special teams piece comes into play, but it also does it on the defensive side as well because if you have now that I know that he doesn't have a lot of interceptions, but Ward on one side allows him to play a little bit tighter, which should allow that pass rush to get home, which you're hoping would then lead to batted balls at the line of scrimmage, sack fumbles, and those kind of things, and turnovers that gives your offense a better starting spot instead of their own 25-yard line over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I look at this is like they're going to address offense in the draft. I mean, a lot of times teams will say, are we going to be offense heavy in free agency or defense heavy in free agency? The Niners clearly were defense heavy in free agency. I would expect them to probably balance it out in the draft, but why defense in free agency? Well, to me, I think the Niners are trying to build an offense around Trey and a lot of young people that will be here with him for a while. So I don't think they wanted to bring in guys on offense who were 28, 29, 30. Maybe. That's just a theory. Because look at who they did sign. Their two big signings, Travarius Ward and Ray McLeod, they're both 25. They're younger than Debo. So, I mean, they're kind of in Trey Lance's time frame, generation, window. I don't know what. So it seems like I would expect the Niners to draft a lot of offense probably early. And that makes sense. I mean, these are guys who are Trey's age.
Yeah, it does. And then even the receivers that they've brought in are younger guys, like 26-year-old guys who I think really are. I think even though they're back end of the roster wide receiver guys, I think they're better than what they had last year in the back end.
Absolutely. And like, to me, they're definitely a nod to Trey Lance. These wide receivers, not Ray McLeod so much, but the other two, Johnson and Turner. We're all saying, the Niners need to bring in deep threat. Okay, boom, here's two. We don't have to draft them. But I mean, these guys both averaged about 17 yards a catch. Both had about a 60-yard catch last year. I mean, that's what they do when the 9 or 10 times a season they get the ball. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think and when you look at it, like Turner, he kind of would fill the role of Trent Sherfield, right? Because he's on special teams, he's a coverage guy, but then he also has a better track record of playing wide receiver in the NFL than Sherfield did when he joined the 49ers. So I think that's a really nice fit.
Sherfield was really good in practice.
Yeah, he was a stud he was a stud throughout practice. That's the funny thing about Marcus Johnson too. He was a stud in practice last year for Tennessee, according to everything I saw. The Sports Illustrated guy who writes for the Titans had an article about that last year.
Yeah. So again, my main takeaway here is that I think expect the Niners to draft offense early again, like last year. Their first 3 picks were offense last year. Could be the same this year. The same.
I don't know. It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. There's a when I did the mock draft that I did the other day with Rob, 2 of my first 3 picks were on the offensive side.
Yeah, I think I would go the same direction if I were doing a mock draft today. Let's do a sort of a mock drafty question. Will the 49ers take a wide receiver with their first pick? The context being, I think most people feel that their offense is up next for the Niners. They've made a lot of defense investments, and on offense, they're kind of weak at offensive line, and they have some wide receivers who might be on the trade block. So it could go either way. Which way would you go? Wide receiver or O-line? Or running? I don't know.
If we're looking at the first pick, I would probably go. Actually, really, with the first pick, I wouldn't go with wide receiver unless they trade up. I don't think there's going to be a receiver worth it at 61. I think they'd have to trade up to get a guy that they really like at there. And even that doesn't really make sense unless they decide that they're not going to redo anything with Deebo Samuel, or they feel like they're going to eventually move off of Brandon Ayuk because their top 3 guys are pretty strong. So I don't know if you want to invest your first pick in the draft and at 61 on a guy who's going to be your number 4 on your depth chart.
Right. So you would think they would go offensive line here or just defense again?
I think there's a really good chance that they go safety here. Just looking at their team and the fact that they have, at the safety position, Jimmy Ward, he's in the last year of his contract, and we haven't heard anything about a new deal for him. And outside of that, I don't really know where else. In terms of their safety room, I think the only guy who signed past this year is Talanoa Hufanga.
That's true. I do think a safety would be a good pick, but I have a feeling they're not going to do it. And I don't know. Why do I have that feeling? Because they don't like drafting DBs that high. I don't know why. And they really like Talanoa for whatever reason. And Could they draft a year ahead of, predicting that Jimmy Ward's going to go? Yeah, but I think they also feel that defensive players are kind of plug and play, that they could address that next year. I'm not saying it's a bad pick. It would be a great pick at safety. I just have a feeling that they're going to take a wide receiver here. I don't know why. They took 3 DBs last year. They doubled up at running back last year, and they took 2 offensive linemen last year. So they could justify not taking any of those spots here. You know what I mean? If they take a guard here, everyone's going to be like, oh, what does that mean about Aaron Banks? And they're not the kind of team that likes to be like, well, we were wrong about that player without even giving him a chance. They didn't take any wide receivers last year. They took 2 in 2020, Ayuk and Juwan Jennings. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling that they're looking for a sort of a new offense, a slightly new passing game with Trey Lance, considering his shot chart, his throwing chart is going to be a lot different where he wants to throw. And plus, the skill sets of the receivers that are required to play with him are different too. All of a sudden, target size matters. Hand-eye coordination matters. Like, if you drop a lot of passes, you probably can't play with Trey Lance. So anyway, the fact that the Niners didn't take any wide receivers last year, the fact that they doubled up on running back, offensive line, and took 3 DBs last year, I think they're going to double up in wide receiver in this draft. They have 9 picks. I think they're going to take 2 wide receivers. And I wouldn't be surprised it depends on who's available. But for example, wide receiver out of Boise State, I've been watching him a little bit this morning, Khalil Shakir. He's a gadget guy. I don't know how much you've watched him, but he's kind of a good after the catch, can line up in the slot, ran a 4.33, really explosive, a little bit like Christian Kirk. If he's available in the late second round, I could see the Niners taking him because 1, they do put Debo at running back a fair amount, and 2, if Ayuk has if they pay Debo and Ayuk has a good season, they may not be able to pay Ayuk. Like, they may need to pick one or the other if wide receivers are really going for $30 million a year. So that's why I'm thinking it's in play.
Yeah, but that also brings up the fact that when you're talking about Brandon Ayuk, that's one of the nice parts about him is that although he's going into year 3, they still have 2 more years of control because they can use the 5th-year option on him since they got him in the first round. So they can kind of extend out that discussion with him a little bit longer.
Hold on. Isn't that 5th-year option getting kind of expensive for wide receivers?
Yeah, it would be expensive because you're starting to look at what is it, the average of like the top 10 at the position or something like that. So yeah, it'd be expensive. It'd be expensive, but
if Christian Kirk is getting big money on the, I'm just saying they might want to trade Ayuk. If they're saying, look, the 5th-year option's expensive, the extension's expensive, but wide receivers bring back a lot in trades. We could get a 1st and a 2nd for Brandon Ayuk when we got him in the late 1st. Then it'd be good to have someone that you have waiting in the wings. And it seems like wide receiver is such an important position, such a valuable position, and it takes a little bit of time to learn the offense and adjust, that you should probably be drafting. Anyway, they're going to take it. We both agree they're going to take wide receivers. They could wait until round 3. But if there's a guy they really like in round 2, I don't think Kyle could resist. He loves wide receivers.
He does. He really does. So we'll see. We'll see what the direction they go there. I think the other thing to think about too is, you talked about Deebo Samuel in the backfield, and we've heard some really big names in terms of running backs attached to them as well. Guys who you would expect to see going in day 2. There's Robinson. Another one is Jerome Ford out of Cincinnati. I think that's the guy that if I'm looking at him, I think Jerome Ford is the better of the 2. He's a big dude, also 5'11", 220. Put up big numbers last year for Cincinnati, but he's a former Alabama guy too. He actually started out at Bama before transferring to Cincinnati. So you've got 2 former Bama guys that they're interested in there. And Ford's a pretty good receiver. Projects more as a short yardage back in the NFL though.
If they take they could take a running back in round 2. But if they take a running back in round 2 or round 3, it basically says we were wrong about Trey Sermon. Sorry, he sucks. I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't know if they feel that way. All I know is that this wide receiver spot, it seems like, again, I think they're trying to find guys who are Trey Lance specific. And they brought in a couple of deep threats. But for example, he's going to be throwing, we saw this in training camp. He's going to throw a lot of passes toward the sideline. And when he misses high. So what the Niners are going to want is someone who can make acrobatic catches near the sideline. I mean, someone who's about 6'3", maybe someone with long arms, someone with really, really good hand-eye coordination. Yeah, I'm just saying that's not Khalil Shakir at all. That's another like Deebo Samuel type, really short arms, really good after the catch. There was a guy at the pro day. I don't know if you know this guy, but the best player at the Niners local pro day was Makai Polk. Okay, He went to Cal for a couple of years, transferred to Mississippi State with Mike Leach, had a big year. Who doesn't have a big year? But anyway, he's 6'3". He's from Richmond. He's not fast. He's not explosive. He's a lot like Juwan Jennings. He ran a 4.59. He had like a 32, but he's really tall. He showed up to the local pro day. And when you read his thing, he's like known for his hands. And he's actually good after the catch 2 on screens. That'd be more of like a day 3 pick. But keep in mind someone like that, if they the second wide receiver they take, kind of like a Juwan Jennings type, just in case Juwan Jennings gets hurt or so. I don't know.
Yeah, you can sell me on the wide receiver thing because I could see them going in that direction, even though that room's full, like you said, kind of getting a guy in a year early, like we've talked about. That seems to be what they've been doing lately. So yeah, that would make sense. Maybe a guy early and another one a little bit later on because this draft does have some solid receivers in the back end of the draft as well.
Last thing I want to say about this before we move on, I'm interested to see what the loss of Wes Welker and the promotion of Leonard Hankerson does, because the position coaches do a lot of the scouting on this team. It's why there's such synergy between the scouting department and the coaching staff. Wes Welker and Leonard Hankerson couldn't have been any different as wide receivers. Wes Welker was like 5'7", and he was a slot receiver who also returned punts. A lot of the Niners wide receivers that they acquired the last few years are kind of like him, not as small, but they're like better after the catch, and they're very versatile, and they're tough, and they block. Leonard Hankerson was 6'3". He wasn't particularly explosive. He was kind of a possession receiver. I wonder if he's going to bring back some of his skill sets to this team, because really, what's the point of bringing in a small receiver with short arms who has questionable hands with Trey Lance? What's the point? That's Travis Benjamin.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. You kind of want someone with some bear traps for hands. Otherwise, it might not work.
Yeah, especially with the way that ball comes in.
Oh, Big Daddy G 5150 5150. Big Daddy G. I probably shouldn't call anyone Big Daddy G, but he wants to be referred to as Big Daddy G, so I'll say
Daddy G.
Big Daddy G. We need a young wideout who can stretch the field and create opportunities for deep threat and O-line that can handle pass protection in the run to give Trey the opportunity to use his skill set. Now, I'm trying to think from Kyle's perspective. Yeah, they would love a 4-3 receiver, but he's kind of like all in with this positionless versatility thing, and the 4-3 guys really can't block or play running back. He could say, look, Debo's explosive, Ayuk's explosive. I need possession guy. I need a 6'3 guy who can catch Trey Lance's, high heat when it goes over his head.
Yeah, no, I think they've already got I think they have the young wideouts that can stretch the field. I just don't think they haven't had the quarterback to take advantage of it with Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk the last couple of years. So I think they have those guys. I think if they go the direction you're talking about, where it's a bigger receiver, maybe a little bit more of a blocker, kind of that kind of a player, that's going to become an offense that I think becomes more of like an 11 personnel kind of offense where you're using the receiver as your second tight end. And they tried to do that in 2020 prior to injuries and stuff like that with some tight ends. So I think they can go that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And like with a deep threat in this offense, you don't necessarily need a guy who runs a 4-2 because you're not really throwing a lot of go routes off of just 3-step drops. It's a lot of like play action, move the pocket, slow developing plays, deep over routes, double moves. I mean, Ayuk and Deebo can do that just like very well. Very well.
No, they can stretch the field for those underneath routes for those guys for sure.
Voice ad agency says, did research. Debo was 26% of the total offense in regular season, 47% in the play. Is that true? I believe it. 36% of Jimmy Garoppolo yards. Get that damn deal done. 47% in the playoffs. Does his agent know that?
I'm sure he does. I want to, sometimes with some of the stuff I'm seeing on 49ers Twitter, I want to ask the 49ers fans if they know it.
I know. It's amazing how fans can sort of convince themselves of anything when times get tough. Big Daddy G once again says so many holes to fill. Wow. Says Big Daddy G, with edge rusher, corner, D-line, O-line, I would take an interior guard, a wideout, and edge rush to complement Bosa. There's a lot of things the Niners could do. They do have a lot of, but I do think they don't need another edge rusher. I mean, that's what Toure is here for. I think you can kind of rule that out.
They've done so much with it, right? They've built this roster right now where it looks pretty solid, at least to me. Other than maybe nickel and safety, they're pretty stout across the board everywhere. So they can go best player available or really hone in on one or two guys that they want to go after. It's going to be a fun draft to watch.
Okay, I have a question for you. It's a pop quiz. I don't know the answer to it. Who is the leader in the 49ers locker room? who is the leader of this team? And it's not a coach. I'm talking a player.
Yeah. The leader, the guy who I think everybody follows is Deebo Samuel. I think he's definitely he's the kind of the heartbeat. I don't know if they, he's not even a raw guy. I don't think. I just think it's because of the way that he plays and people follow. They always want to follow the best player.
Yes, I think so too. It seems to me that he is the best player, arguably, but also like the most competitive. I mean, he was the one that was like sobbing when they lost. And now Nick Bosa sobbed in the Super Bowl too. Those two are both very competitive. It's just there's something about Bosa. He could be the leader on this team. It just doesn't seem like it's his temperament. He's more of like, I'm in my own world. I'm doing my job. He's almost like Klay Thompson. Like, don't talk to me. I don't even know what's going on. I'm just really good at what I do. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It's just there's something. I don't know. There's something that seems like Deebo is the heartbeat. He's the leader of the team. He is
the leader. And then you're right. What you said about Bosa, he's the quiet guy who just kind of goes out there and, even when he talks in his press conferences, he's, quiet and whatever. I don't know how loud he is on the field. I think he's relatively quiet on the field too.
Yeah.
He lets his play speak for himself. And it's Deebo Samuel, Fred Warner, maybe on the defensive side. And it's going to be fun to watch how Trey Lance develops into that position as well.
Right, because in the past it was Jimmy Garoppolo. Every player on the team would say it. He's the quarterback. He had a natural leadership about him that he learned in New England. But he can't be the leader if he's the backup quarterback. And Trey Lance can't be the leader until he wins the job. And really, Deebo Samuel is so much better at his job than both of them that he is the leader of this team. And I think that's something that the front office should think about, because Buckner was the leader of this team for a while too. And I don't think they cared. They didn't really put any stock into that. They shipped him off, and they felt Armstead's just as good. Well, Armstead's not a leader, and Kinlaw's almost as good. Well, I don't know. Maybe leadership does matter at a certain point.
No, I think it does, and you want your quarterback to be the leader. That's the guy that you want to be it. But when you're going through a transition like what they're going through, it's for Lance has to win games in order to become the leader. I think you can't just become the leader because of your position. So that's why right now I'd put Deebo Samuel as the top one. For the 49ers with Warner probably second. Warner's the one who's usually the loudest, and I think he's the one that's out there, before the games, breaking them down and everything like that. But definitely, I think it's Deebo number one, and that's who they look to, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, Warner's great, but like he's not the same level of impact player as Deebo. He can talk, he can be sort of like the coach on the field, but in terms of like who are players looking to, like, are we going to win this week? How does Deebo look? Okay, I think we got it. Now, I don't think it's as Kittle as much. I mean, Kittle is very animated and he's very marketable, but I don't think he's necessarily like the leader of the team. I think he's also kind of off in his own world to a degree as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on there. That's accurate.
The last person I would put in the conversation is Trent Williams. And I think he does have natural leadership. I think everyone on the team looks up to him. He has this like extreme confidence that everyone can feel. And he's not a rah-rah guy, but it's him and Deebo coming out first in the tunnel, right? It's like those are the two best players, to me, those are the two alphas on the team. I don't know what an alpha means, but those are the two alphas on the team. And I don't know why we need to say it, but
yeah,
it's interesting that when it's not the quarterback. And the Niners have put together this really good team. You could say that John and Kyle are really good at putting together a team, but the fact that it's year 6 and they're still trying to figure out the quarterback position is surprising.
Yeah. Well, they thought they had their guy, and then after a couple of years of injuries, they realized they didn't. So, they're readjusting there. But yeah, I would say, based like what you said, it's definitely Deebo, Trent Williams. They're the two alpha dogs, and everybody else is the den mates.
I would think so. All right, let's talk about the real leader of the 49. I'm sorry. Mike Mcglinchey is back. He put a picture up. Some people said he didn't look skinny, and then he came back with like a full documentary on Instagram where he was pushing sleds and lifting weights and running and looking great. And then he even showed a scale. He wasn't on the scale, but we can assume, because Mike Mcglinchey's that kind of guy, that he was on the scale and it was 310 pounds. Does this change everything? Is this like a big twist at the end of an M. Night Shyamalan movie? He was 310 pounds all along. He's going to be ready for week 1. What do you think?
I thought that was pretty funny. But the thing, as far as the rehab, he looked good moving. That's, I think, the bigger thing for me was his movement. He's
Yeah,
running and he's doing all those kind of things. So he looks like he's probably like around that same level as maybe a Javon Kinlaw. They're doing the same running drills. So that's
right.
good. We saw him doing some explosive type of movements with the weights. That's positive. The weight thing was kind of funny because we didn't see Mike Mcglinchey on the scale. All we saw was the weight. For all we know, he just took a bunch of those plates that they let for weightlifting, put 310 pounds of weight of plates on the scale and step back. Either that or who knows what's going on there. But we
I
didn't
don't
see
know.
Mike Mcglinchey on the scale to get to know that
No.
that was actually him that weighed 310 pounds. He could weigh 280 right now. We wouldn't know.
Yeah, he
But
could have just been like him holding one weight. Here I am.
exactly. I'm 310. Didn't see it. So, whatever. We'll see how that works. But I was impressed by the movement that we were seeing from him. And it does change my view a little bit of the way that offensive line might be put together in 2022.
Yeah, a few weeks ago I was thinking, man, this offensive line is getting worse and worse. It's really bad. I mean, then on the other hand, look at the Bengals, right? The Bengals gave up the most sacks in the league last year. The year before they got Joe Burrow really injured. They still went to the playoff. They still went to the Super Bowl this year because they were correct in drafting a wide receiver over an offensive. Offensive line is important, but I think playmakers are more important because if you get the ball out of the quarterback's hands immediately, then the trenches don't matter, and all of a sudden it's about players in space. And it seems like what the Niners could say is like, look, Mcglinchey's going to play this year. We took 2 offensive linemen last year. Justin School's coming back. We have a lot of depth. We don't have to have the best offensive line in the league. We just have to have a decent offensive line. And we have a decent offensive line. We think we do. I don't know if they do, but they think they do. They could say, instead of, taking another offensive lineman in round 2, like we did last year, let's take a wide receiver. Let's give Trey Lance another quick option, someone who gets open and makes things really easy on him. I mean, it seems like that's kind of where the league is going at this point.
Yeah, 100%. The NFL is a quarterback-driven league. Quarterback and having explosive guys on the outside. That's really how it's been. So that's why kind of throughout the offseason, I've been saying that the 49ers' success is going to come down to what they do with the quarterback. If the quarterback is healthy and can stay healthy, I think they're going to be a team that's going to be in the hunt. And that's whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance, whatever. That's why the 49ers have always been successful. I mean, for me, it's also based on the fact that in 2019, they won a lot of games with Justin School playing left tackle in place of Joe Staley. And then last year with Tom Compton be able to play right tackle, and they were able to make it through that. And then even in 2020, I think that team is better if the quarterback plays just better.
Sure. I would say, though, that what's going to happen to Trey Lance this year is he's going to get hit a lot of times. And I mean, we'll see. I like Joe Burrow got hit a lot of times last year, and he made it through the whole year. He did mess up his thumb, and he had got some injuries, but Trey Lance is going to get hit a lot of times, and that's sort of the trade-off you make if you want to build your offense around playmakers. That's what happened to Seattle, right? They were building their offense technically the right way. They have explosive DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson. Wilson got hit so many times, he was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm out. I don't want to do it. And they couldn't explain to him, like, actually, this is the right way to build a team. So I just, it's the right way to do it until your quarterback gets hurt, essentially. So I just hope that it can't be bad. And if the choice at left guard is Banks versus Jalen Moore and neither one is good, then you got a problem, right? I mean, Daniel Brunskill is good enough. Daniel Brunskill is definitely good enough. Mac is good enough. We'll see about Mcglinchey. Well, we'll see what he is. We'll see. I'm a little skeptical on the right tackle position, although they have won a lot of games with backups at that position. So I get it. I do get it.
Yeah, with the Mcglinchey piece, if Mcglinchey's able to be healthy, though, I think that could change up who plays right guard. That I think if Mcglinchey's your guy from day one and he shows that he can do that, then Jalen Moore now becomes more of is he fighting with Brunskill for the right guard spot,
or is McKivitz going to play guard too? You could have a whole competition there. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. And again, you don't have to have the best offensive line in the league, but you just can't have a bad one. And I think the Niners one right now is borderline bad. But if Mcglinchey comes back, if some of these young guys emerge, it could be perfectly fine, and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and you also mentioned the Seattle situation with Russell Wilson. I think it is important to point out that Russell Wilson was at his best when he wasn't the guy, when they had, the running backs there and they had the ability to run the ball. So he wasn't throwing the ball so much. And that's why he wasn't getting hit that much. So it was when they started letting Russ cook that he started to not be quite so good and starting to get beat up. And that's where the 49ers are a little bit different.
What you don't want to happen to Trey Lance is what happened to Andrew Luck. I mean, that's a cautionary tale for every franchise. Like the Colts were lucky enough to be bestowed Andrew Luck and they blew it. And everyone that likes football suffered because they didn't know how to put just a competent offensive line together. They couldn't do it. And look, Jack, me and you, before we move on, last year we had a fun discussion that it would really, I mean, people say clickbait and stuff. People weren't trying to hear it. It wasn't driving clicks. We were talking about should the Niners sign Trent Williams? And we were saying is, yeah, man, he's great. He's the best left tackle in the league. But do you want to have the best left tackle in the league and a questionable other 4/5 of your offensive line? Or do you want to have a good, solid offensive line at all 5 spots? Look what the Niners have. They have Trent Williams and 4 question marks. This is what we were saying is going to happen. This is what we were saying was going to happen. And to me, on defense, this could happen to the defensive line too when Bosa starts making $30 million a year.
Yeah, it definitely could. And the part of the other piece there was that Trent Williams is a really good guy, good player, all pro this year, but he's getting to the end of the road. And so how much longer is he going to be able to keep this up? We keep hearing people talk about Deebo Samuel and his injury history, and the 49ers can't give him top dollar because he's been injured. Has anybody that's giving that argument gone back and looked to see what Trent Williams his injury history was prior to him signing that big deal and becoming the highest paid left tackle with the 49ers? That guy hasn't played a full season going back to, I think, like 2012 or 2013, something like that. So the Deebo stuff is just wild to me.
I just think Parag has conditioned Niner fans to feel like wide receivers aren't worth big money and are replaceable. It's like, dude, this is the team of Jerry Rice. Come on. Are you telling me that if in 1990 or 1988 Bill Walsh had to choose between Jerry Rice and an all-pro defensive end, he would have chose the defensive end because you can't give away Are you kidding me? This is the 49ers. People should know this. Playmakers matter.
Oh yeah. 100%. There's no way that he would have gone he wasn't moving off from Jerry Rice. He would have moved to quarterback before he was going to move Jerry Rice. He almost did.
Good call. Big Daddy G says, I'm laughing my ass off. I'm glad the name made you guys laugh. I'm changing it. LOL. It's just, I don't know.
Big Daddy.
If that's what you want people to call you, I mean, that's on you. You're the one, you're the customer. All right, let's move on. Can you tell me how this Deebo drama will end? And I'm not saying he's the one being dramatic. The whole thing is very dramatic. Tell me it's going to have a happy ending for the 49ers.
It better, because if it doesn't, this is a really bad move if they decide that they're going to move on from Deebo Samuel, because they're not going to find anybody that they can bring in what Deebo Samuel does. I think they're eventually going to get something done with him. You start to look at the numbers in the market, and I think he fits in there, and they could fit him in there with. I think they could fit both him and Nick Bosa in there if they choose to. And Deebo Samuel deserves $40+ million guaranteed at signing, or somewhere. He deserves a $60 to $70 million guaranteed deal. Obviously, that's not going to be at signing, but that's what he deserves, and the 49ers should give it to him, because this guy, he put it. I keep hearing people talk about he's only had one good year. That's not right. He's had 2 good years. His rookie year was really good. It was the second best in the history of the team.
Yes, thank you. And he was great in the playoffs.
Yeah, and he was great. Yeah, and he was great in the playoffs, and he was one of the best. In 2021, if they don't move him back to the running back position, they just let him play receiver. He ends up with the 17 over almost 1,800 yards, 1776.
Where's Jimmy?
With Jimmy Garoppolo throwing him the ball, and then when you look at like the numbers that Jerry Rice and put up and stuff like that, a lot of the reason that Rice had the big numbers that he did and the touchdown numbers was because he was able to run deep routes, and he was able to beat the defense on those deep posts and things like that. And right now the 49ers don't have a quarterback that can throw it. So I think that Deebo Samuel could put up huge numbers if they just let him play wide receiver with Trey Lance.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if they think that his best is behind him, I don't know about that. He's 26. He's played his whole career with Jimmy Garoppolo. Trade him to a team with a good quarterback, or just keep him and see what happens with Trey Lance. I'm not saying Trey Lance is Matthew Stafford, but Trey Lance can get the ball to Deebo in more places of the field. He doesn't have to be explosive, on slants and screens, and that's it. You can now run posts. You can now run deep over routes. I think his numbers could explode the way Cooper Kupp's did. And really, as you said, they should give him more targets. They cut his targets in half the second half of the season, not because of his play, because of Jimmy's play.
Yeah, because they needed to move him to a spot where they could get him the ball and let him make plays because they couldn't get it down the field. And so there's only so many, you can only throw so many tunnel screens and slants.
Also, they were really afraid of Jimmy's turnovers, and it became a thing like we got to not throw that much. I mean, the only team that threw less than the Niners is Seattle. So if that's going to be your whole thing, like run as much as possible, well, you got to get Deebo Samuel touches. So anyway.
The other thing on Deebo really quick, and you mentioned it, and this goes back to Trey Lance, was that what Lance had three passes of 40+ yards last year,
yes.
Which you were projecting that out. 2 of those were to Deebo Samuel for touchdowns.
Thank you. So I mean, you could argue that Cooper Kupp should have been the MVP of the league last year. He had a historic year. He was the MVP of the Super Bowl. I mean, Deebo could be the MVP of the league this year. Give him a slightly better quarterback who's much more explosive, and now he can do. Yeah, I mean, he could be the MVP. He could go for 2,000 yards this year. So
I agree. I think he could if they throw him the ball down the field. It opens up a lot of things for him. He's not taking those hard hits in the middle of the line like they do. I mean, you're still going to give him the ball every once in a while in the backfield, but you're not going to line him up, as a running back, 10, 15 times a game like they were doing last year.
So I don't think we've answered the question yet. The resolution. I'm afraid that remember there was that report that Kyle and John met with Deebo in Florida for dinner. Remember that? It was, okay. I think it was a little bit after Tyreek Hill got traded. Then there was a report that they went out to dinner, and I think everyone said, "Oh, things are good between the night." I think that night or the morning after all the social media stuff happened. I think that night he took down his 49ers post, and the next morning he changed his profile picture. Look, I wasn't at the dinner, and I'm no sleuth, but it sounds like something was said at that dinner that didn't go well with Deebo. I'm guessing that John and Kyle were the messengers that night. They were presenting whatever the hell Parag had decided was the initial offer, and it was less than Deebo expected. Now it's probably just the initial offer. Deebo says he wants to be the highest paid non-quarterback. The Niners probably said, you're going to be the highest paid running back. It probably was something, I'm guessing, that was so insulting to Deebo that he did what he did, and now people feel like he's being dramatic. Anyway, I hope that the Niners can work this out because that's my best reading of the situation, and if that's the case, I don't know, man. This could get bad.
I don't either. The other thing that really caught my attention this week was what Peter King came out with, and where he's saying how over the last 2 years, Deebo Samuel's only averaged 800 and something yards receiving, and blah blah blah. That's such garbage. And if that's coming from Peter King, he's tied in with the 49ers. So in terms of those guys, he was in the war room, wasn't he, back in 2017 or something like that? Yeah. So if that's coming from Peter King, and that's if that's the direction the 49ers are trying to take this thing, I would tell, if I was Deebo, I'd be telling him to stick it, just like he is.
Me too. And what's crazy is I had Larry Krueger on the channel a couple of days ago, and I was like, okay, so what do you think? What's going to happen? He's like, oh, he's going to get traded. He's going to get traded before the draft. I was like, wow. Larry's like, oh, absolutely. There's no way the Niners and him are going to work this out. It's just a bold prediction, but oh man, I mean, I feel like my head's telling me the same thing. My heart is telling me, not my heart, but my gut is telling me the Niners are not that stupid. No one could be that stupid. But my head is telling me they will outthink themselves on this one. Parag is going to dig in. There's no way he's going to say, oh, well, the market changed. Forget it. What do you want, Deebo? Let me give you a blank check. This is not how the Niners do business. Ask Jimmy Ward. He was laughing about it. He was like, oh, Deebo. Yeah, he's going to learn.
Yeah. No, that's one of those deals where the 49ers are going to have to change the way that they do some of their stuff moving forward anyway. And if they lose this guy, it's a big blow for everything. I understand that Trey Lance has some things that he can do differently, but I mean Deebo Samuel's the engine that gets that thing running really.
Yeah, and everyone says, well, you never trade a Hall of Fame pass rusher. You never get rid of a Hall of Fame off left tackle, but a potential an all-pro wide receiver, Kyle can create those. In what world? When did we get to that? It's so crazy to me. Really, really weird.
We see that with everybody. It's pretty much anybody that does well in the 49ers system. They're all a construct of Kyle Shanahan. Go back and just watch the plays that Deebo Samuel made. Was it great scheming to run a tunnel screen on 3rd and 17 for 80+ yards?
That was genius. Everyone should do that.
Right? I mean, all we heard about during the scouting combine was how all these teams are trying to find the next Deebo Samuel. Well, you've already got him on your roster. So, and on top of that, the fans who are upset about the 49ers not going all in this offseason, here's your all-in move right here, Deebo Samuel and then Nick Bosa.
Right. And it's like, so I think some Niner fans are thinking like, you could trade Deebo right now to the Jets. You could get the 10th pick. You could get the 38th pick. Maybe you get the 4th pick. Okay, maybe. And that's really cool. You can get a lot of players. But again, why would the Jets even think about doing that? Because they're desperate for a player like Deebo. If that guy was in this draft, they wouldn't have to make the trade. So you're trading into the top 10 to get someone who's not Deebo because the Jets just told you that he's not good. To me, it's like, why? Why would you do this?
And the Jets. Yeah, and we know that the Jets aren't going to offer that anyway. They didn't offer that for Tyreek Hill, who was looking for the same kind of money that Deebo Samuel is. They offered 2 second-round picks.
That's right.
And so that's if you're thinking that the 49ers are going to somehow come up with 2 first-round picks from the Jets, I think you're living in a fantasy world just based off of what we've seen from them already.
Well, the Chiefs got a late first for Tyreek Hill, a late first, right? The 29th pick in the draft. Deebo's going to be worth the 10th pick? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Maybe should be, but I don't know if he is.
Yeah, I don't think that they'd offer something that high.
So the resolution of the Deebo drama, it could happen in about 2 weeks. There could be a big trade. And if the Niners get a first-round pick, even if it's a late one, I think a lot of Niner fans will be like, yay, Perron did it again. I think that would be a very dark day for the 49ers. And I'm telling you, I'm looking right at you, John, Kyle. If you do this, you're going to miss the playoffs next year. And it's going to be your fault for trading Deebo. He's worth 3 or 4 wins. Don't do that to Trey Lance. Come on. Because he's going to take all the blame when they go 6-11 without Deebo Samuel. Don't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, trading Deebo Samuel would be the worst move by the 49ers since they traded Charles Haley.
Oh. Yeah, old heads, you might remember that. But the Niners, they won the Super Bowl with Haley in 94 and then traded him in 95? No.
They traded him in 92.
92!
And they traded him 92, and then Haley won the next 2 Super Bowls with Dallas.
That's right, because he was on the team that won in 88 and 89, right?
Yeah.
And then so they just sent the balance of power over to Dallas. Here, you take him.
Yeah, go ahead, take him for a second-round pick.
Ooh.
Yeah, but I think the resolution to the Deebo thing comes really probably once they get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. They need to move him off the roster. That gives them the free space to go out and get Deebo signed. I think they could front load it a little bit and use some of Jimmy's money on Samuel.
Niner fan forever 72. This is Big Daddy G, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe it's not. Pay the man who's proven himself, especially with an inconsistent 2 interceptions a game, Jimmy G, and through the injuries. Yeah, man. Look. If the Niners do like, hey, you haven't proven it, buddy. Do it again. And Deebo says, all right, fine, challenge accepted. It could get way more expensive. I'm just saying.
It always does. Look at the way the market shifted this year. It's going to continue to go up. These guys know the salary cap's going up, so every year it's going to increase. Somebody asked me yesterday on Twitter, Swan Song, who I think follows you, he was asking me, well, how much did those guys? Because I put up the numbers for Deebo Samuel compared to the top 3 guys, right, for their first 3 years, and he's like, well, how much did those guys get paid in their second contract? And he went and did the research because I told him we got to compare it to the top guy in the market at that time, and Tyreek Hill was paid second highest.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you look at Deebo Samuel's numbers, he's better right there with Tyreek Hill in their first 3 years.
Yes. Yes. Oh man, I don't know the resolution here, but I'm trying to think that the Niners are just not dumb enough. Okay, my dad was trying to bet me this week. First show in like 6 months, he's already, doing wine bets. He's like, oh, you think the Niners are going to trade Deebo? I was like, no. He's like, okay, I was going to bet you. Like, it would be insane. It would be insane. And I know they did it with DeForest Buckner, but Deebo is a fan favorite in a way that Buckner wasn't. I mean, Deebo scores all the touchdowns. Buckner is a defensive tackle. It's different.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like the fact that your dad's trying to trade you already. He's already,
he got me on one. He got me on one.
He wants some free wine. He
cornered me. He was like, "Do you think Jimmy's going to be on the team week 1?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "We're betting on that." I'm like, oh man. Do you understand how insane they would have to be to keep Jimmy as a backup? I was like, "Yes, I do." But so he's got me on that one. NorCal Troca says trade Debo for good picks. Debo does the work of 3 players, but if he gets hurt, it's over. And if we get 3 players and one gets hurt, we still got 2 left. Well, here's the thing, man. 3 players or 3 picks? Because if odds are 2 of those picks will bust.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. That's it. And I think the injury stuff is a big deal. But he missed 1 game in 19, 1 game last year. He lost part of 2020 because he injured himself. Yeah. Wasn't even on the team. He injured himself working out with Jimmy Garoppolo in Nashville. So
it's true. And that was a weird offseason when people were trying to work out during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Only if there's no other way to keeping Debo. Yeah. Well, I'm not really. Yes, I feel you. All right, let's move on. Last topic. This is a meta sports journalism topic, and I think it's really interesting because if Jimmy Garoppolo is on the team in training camp and there's a quarterback competition, to me, I don't think it will be covered unbiasedly, probably from either side. But what I think is I feel like, and I'd love to hear what you think, but I feel like we saw it to a degree last year. Since Jimmy has all these wins under his belt, it's almost like it doesn't matter what he does in practice. He threw 11 picks last year. And every time it was well, he bounced back. He had a good day. It's okay. He's working on things. He's sort of established in it. You already know what he can do. Even though it's not quite good enough, you know what he can do, and he wins a lot of games. With Trey, he's a total unknown. So it's everything about him that he does is well, he had a good day, but the move the ball period wasn't good. Or he throws it too hard. Or his ball wobbles. It's wow, man, we're really talking about the nature of the spiral. I've never, ever gone that deep with Jimmy Garoppolo, but I feel like a lot of people, we know what Jimmy is. We don't know what Trey is. The other thing is, I think a lot of people, maybe fans, not journalists, that love Jimmy are man, Jimmy's gotten way too much flack. Now it's time for Trey Lance to see how it feels. I think there's that part too, but that's a more of a fan thing. What do you think of the whole conversation around these quarterbacks?
Yeah, well, I think the last part you just said is really I think that's where you're going to get a lot of the Jimmy. I don't even think it matters if Garoppolo's on the team. You're going to still get that from those fans. The fans who the Super 49er fans are on Twitter, right? Or the Super Jimmy Garoppolo fans are on Twitter. Yes. They're still going to be saying Jimmy would have done it better whether Garoppolo's on the team or not. That's still going to be a piece of discussion, just like it was with Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick in 2013, right? The 49ers were winning a bunch of games though, so they had to be kind of quiet. They couldn't really, there wasn't a whole lot there to talk about because the 49ers kept winning. Yeah. But that I think from that standpoint, and then in terms of the way that he's covered.
By 2014, the Smith people were like, see, told you.
Yeah. And then as far as the way that it's covered by the media, I think it's, I think if you're doing it right, you're able to explain the good and bad for both guys without having to create a narrative around one guy or the other.
Correct.
And that was kind of my point when I was reaching out, on the Twitter stuff the other day, last week it wasn't really, it was more about, hey, I'll be honest, when I saw it, I took it as, well, I'm getting pigeonholed here because if I go and I talk about Trey Lance being not good in practice, then I'm going to become the hater. Right. And I want to be, I'm not a Trey Lance hater. I'm not a Jimmy Garoppolo.
You do a really good job of being true to what you see. You do a really good job of being true to what you see. And I think what we're going to see is some days Trey Lance is better. Some days Jimmy is better in practice. And we're going to have to relay that accurately.
Yeah. And I think that you can do that with Trey Lance and you can say, and that's why, for me, when you go back and you look at the Houston game, for example, during the regular season, that second start, I think it's important to show the mistakes in the first half and not be afraid of saying this is a mistake, even though it's a completion, because that makes the second half look so much more better because you can see the growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It wasn't just he was making crazy plays off schedule in the second half. He was correcting plays he messed up in the first half. Right.
Exactly. The slant, the second time he has it, he drills it in. The second time he has Ayuk wide open in the hole, he sticks it on him. The throw to George Kittle down the middle, just a beauty. And then the deep balls too. So, I mean, it's really hard when you're writing about football to be able to try to put all this into an article or into something like a recap, because there's just so much information and you start to, it's just hard to kind of weave it all through. But it's important, I think, to talk about the good and the bad if we can, especially during training camp.
Agree. This year, if they do a quarterback competition, which again I think would be a mistake, but if they do it, hopefully it'll be like a level playing field where they're really splitting reps with the first team and going against it. Because last year
Mm-hmm.
it was never level. Like Trey would have a good day, but it'd be mostly with the backup. So if your lens was Trey's not ready, then you could be like, well, it doesn't really count because it's going. I mean, who do you go against? And then when Jimmy would throw a pick, you could say like, well, it's Fred Warner. You know, Fred Warner's a great player. I mean, come on, he's going against an All-Pro. So there's a lot of that. You know, nothing Trey did was really mattered because it was with backups, and every mistake was sort of hyper focused on because he's with backups. And this year, I'd like to think if the Niners can structure it in a fair way, that all of us could do our best to really cover it in a fair way, because a lot's at stake for this team and these young men. And I think we're part of the whole thing. You know, I don't know. I just think it's important. So I'm trying to get my mind right. I've never covered a real quarterback competition. It's gonna be interesting.
No, I see what you're saying there, and it makes sense because you want to have these guys really be able, if they're competing, you want them to be able to do, you know, and in a way, doing that competition in that manner hurts the team.
Yes.
Right? Because they're not getting, the first team guys aren't getting the flow of the quarterback, for example. Right. So it could kind of hurt the team in that way. So I see that. And the other piece too, for me, is that if I think Trey Lance, I think pretty much everybody understands Trey Lance is going to be the guy. And so I think from our standpoint, I think you're going to see the writing and the way folks cover it be a little bit more pro Trey Lance if he's doing well than we saw last year, because Garoppolo was kind of still expected to be the guy based on what the team was saying.
You know what's the ultimate irony here too is, like, I think again what I think a lot of the Jimmy Garoppolo support's going to leave when he's gone, especially in the media. Take someone like the spreadsheet. I think he's a little confused as to who he's supposed to back. But as soon as Jimmy's gone, you're going to see the spreadsheet become the number one Trey Lance fan of all time. And what's going to be funny is I'm a natural skeptic. So once there's only one quarterback, I'm going to slowly start to look at Trey Lance in a much more skeptical light. And pretty much me and the spreadsheet are going to change very much on this issue. And that's definitely going to happen. You know that's going to happen. But as long as there's two quarterbacks on the team, it makes it really, really weird. It just does. So
yeah. No, and I agree with you. And that's why for myself, I've tried to always be that way with him. That's why I think a lot of people felt like I was a Trey Lance hater last year when I kept thinking the guy was really good. It just, I just didn't feel like he was. I felt like the Fernandez process with him was good. I think it's going to make him better in 2022 than if he had played last year. As crazy as that might sound, we saw, and the reason we saw little bits and pieces of it last year at the end of the year. So.
Well, we'll see. I mean, part of me feels like, man, he didn't play last year. The offensive line is downgraded. He's going to get hurt. The other part of me is feeling like, stop worrying. He's going to he's really, really athletic. Even when he misses reads, he extends plays and good things happen. He's really explosive. He has explosive playmakers. He has Kyle Shanahan. The offense is going to take off. I mean, the bar is really low. So part of me feels like he's going to have a really good year.
Yeah, I think if you were a Trey Lance believer last year, don't stop being a Trey Lance believer now. Just kind of stick with it, because if he is having issues, some of it's going to be him. But you can talk about it based off of, like you said, if Trey Lance is playing good, but they're losing games because the defense, well, it's not Trey Lance's fault, and that's the story that becomes a story. If Trey Lance is playing well, but he's getting pressured too much, that's the story. So there's lots of ways that we can discuss it. It'll be a lot of fun to go through it. In a lot of ways, if Trey Lance is struggling, the stories become a lot more interesting, I think, to readers.
Absolutely. I mean, if he's not as good as Jimmy Garoppolo, that's a story. If he's not, great, but he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo, that needs to be in the context there. And if he improves, if he doesn't, I mean, that's all kind of stuff. But I think another thing, like with this competition, if they're having a competition, does Trey Lance have to like definitively beat him? Or if it's close enough, do you go with the young guy because he's going to improve?
I think it's different this year. I think last year he had to definitively beat him because he was the new guy. Nobody really knew who he was, and he had to come out and he really had to blow it away. And that's why he didn't become the starting quarterback last year, because although he had some splash plays, he wasn't doing it enough. Whereas now, this year, I think you look at him, as long as if they're at the same level this year, it's Trey Lance's team and Jimmy Garoppolo is somewhere else. I don't think we're even going to get there. Really, realistically, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be gone before training camp because they're going to need that money elsewhere.
Good. And if they're unlike last year, there's not a bunch of vets on 1-year deals saying we need to start the veteran quarterback. I mean, the signings they made were guys who were younger than Debo, dudes who were 25. So they're starting a bunch of guys who are unproven. So how can anyone in this locker room say, "Oh, Trey's not ready"? Aaron Banks isn't ready. Talanoa Hufanga isn't ready. Like this year as a whole, like let's see what happens kind of year. You know what I mean?
Sure. It could definitely go that way. It could. I could. I don't feel like it is, or at least I don't think it's going to go that way. But I can understand if it does because you do have some question marks out there.
Yeah. Murphy says Jimmy and Trey is like Montana and Young. Jed, thank you, Jed.
Well, I think that quote gets taken out of context a little bit because I don't think he was trying to say that they're at the same level in terms of their ability. I think he was saying more about the fact that you have two good quarterbacks who can coexist and not beat each other up in the locker room.
Yeah, that's what he was trying to say. But anytime
it didn't come out that way.
That didn't come out that way. Tua and Waddle for Trey Lance. No.
Why would you do that? That's awful.
Ew. Murphy says, saw some footage of Trey working out the other day. One is passes really close to a spiral. Can't believe we didn't trade for him. One of his passes really close to a spiral. That's funny. That is funny.
Hey, that's funny. I saw a thing too where Trey Lance was in Santa Clara the other day, or San Jose. There, he was the guys that he works out with. QB Takeover were in San Jose up at Valley Christian last week, and he was out there working with some kids. So that was pretty cool to see.
Oh, nice. When I was an intern at KTVU with Mark Ibanez, who just retired, I would do high school football on Fridays. And one game we did at Valley Christian, they were really good. Probably a good team. Yeah,
Valley Christian. They're part of the league that just dominates the Santa Clara County area.
Oh, nice. Do they go up against De La Salle every year? Is that like the big clash of the Titans?
They're one of the teams that can go in and play again and beat them because I don't know if you follow high school football around here. St. Francis High School from Mountain View beat De La Salle last year, and
it's always the Catholic schools.
Well, because Valley Christian and St. Francis are in the same league. Yeah, Sarah, which is I think
another Catholic school. What is that?
I think that's Larry Kruger. I think Larry Kruger is I don't know if he was a Sarah guy
or
if
he's
SI.
He's SI.
He's SI. So SI is in that league as well.
Yeah. Bishop O'Dowd.
You're over on the other side of the bay.
All right. Well, that's our show. Thanks for watching, everyone. I think I'm going on with Rob in an hour. You went on with Rob yesterday, right? Is he off IR?
I went on with him on Wednesday, and he's
off IR?
Last night he did a show where he took his bandage off. He said he was going to go bandage free. So now he's back. He's ready to go.
At the buzzer, Murphy says, assuming Debo is back, should this still be a playoff roster in the NFC West? No. How much blame does Trey deserve if he falls short? That's the thing. I'm telling you, this freaking schedule is brutal.
The schedule's brutal. If Debo's back and they are a playoff roster, if the quarterback stays healthy, I think they can be in the fight. If they fall short, it's going to be because of areas outside of that. I mean, they're playing against some really good quarterbacks, and that's one of the things. If you go back and look at the 49ers over the last 3 years, look at the level of quarterbacks they're playing against, it kind of gives you an idea what their record's going to be.
As long as Trey Lance and Debo Samuel play like 15 games each, the Niners should be at least a wild card team. But Debo does have, Debo just pulls him like he's the opposite of Kittle. Kittle has bird legs that are kind of breaking down. Debo has a thick lower body that sometimes might be a little imbalanced. I mean, his quads are huge. Anyway, if he can stay healthy like last year, if Trey Lance doesn't get beaten to oblivion behind a questionable pass protecting offensive line, they should be fine. They should be pretty good. Yeah, they should be.
I would say they're at 10. If they can win 10 games, they're in the hunt, right? And 9 games, that gets you into the playoffs in the NFC.
I mean, they were a 10-win team last year. They've lost a few things, but theoretically, they should be better at quarterback. They should be better at cornerback. They have Ray McLeod. Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I'll be back in an hour, I think, with Rob. Follow Jack. Subscribe to Jack. Get to know Jack.
Come check me out at 3:00.